Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you're listening to this podcast is focused on Grace Track, inside the Grace Track. Now, today I want to talk about, well, it's March 24th today. I want to talk about how the Grace Track started with me and how I began to see a different way of being a pastor, a person, and how I really believe the Holy Spirit worked in me and through me. It was probably around 2018 in the summer of July. And I remember thinking, I'm ready to quit. I'm done. I don't feel the movement of the Holy Spirit. Our church is kind of floating around and not knowing, not having a specific direction. And so in a meeting that I had with our superintendent, the superintendent offered, said the bishops are going to offer what we call recalibration. And for people that are struggling with the churches, I had no idea what it meant. I had no idea what to do. And I remember volunteering and said, I'll do it. So they sent a bunch of books to us in October, November. One of the books was Recalibration. And in that recalibration was interesting because that book says the reason your church is where it is because of you as a pastor, which I thought, oh my goodness, I mean, this is not the uplifting joy that I want to get. But it also focused on you have the responsibility to change it. So the recalibration was in Tampa, Florida, and I had no idea. I flew to Tampa, had no idea what was going on. We met in a Free Methodist church in Tampa. And so today I want to introduce you to one of the people that I met in our team with the Reverend Zach Martin. Welcome, Zach.
Hey, Kevin. Thank you.
And so Zach and I got together sometime in January, and I think what we did, we had to get together in January, February, March, April, May, and October, correct?
I think that's right.
Okay, so we met, where did we meet in February?
February, I believe, was in Seattle. I think
Okay.
Mike McCune and I put that one together.
Okay, we met at the district headquarters there, which we met the superintendent. Now he's a bishop.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, where are you from? What church do you pastor?
I serve at Mountain View Christian Fellowship. It's a Free Methodist church in Yakima, Washington.
Okay, and you're in Yakima, Washington right now, obviously.
Yeah, I'm sitting in my office right now.
Okay, which you shouldn't be in your office, but thank you, because we're on a lockdown. And then, okay, we met in Seattle, and then March, I think we met in Sacramento area.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And then May, we met in Idaho.
Yep, at
Spokane.
that huge, amazing rental house.
Yeah, and at that big Airbnb where that was fun. I missed that. And then we met at our church in October of 2019,
Yeah.
right?
It was 2018.
2018. Okay, so it's, wow, that's a long time ago. So one of the things that, let me ask you this, why did you sign up for the recalibration? What was going on with you?
Yeah, so our superintendent at the time, who's now Bishop Matt, and the assistant superintendent, Jeff Smith, they met with me and just wanted to encourage me. And they believed and really wanted to encourage me to be a part of the Recalibrate program. They thought that it probably would be beneficial for our church, but they also really pushed that it would be a beneficial training for me just as a pastor.
Okay.
And that they felt like it would be uplifting for me. It would give me some training and perhaps some, I don't know, some better self-esteem maybe as a leader, to just feel like I was up to this, or that I could handle it. I don't know the right wording there, but it was encouraging. And for me, at least, it didn't feel like they were saying your church is in trouble. For me, it felt like they were saying, we believe in you and we want to do this because we believe in you. So it felt like an investment. And I mean, yes, it was intended to help our church get some momentum behind it, because it had been a long time for them without really any big momentum going forward. So.
Yeah, it's true. In fact, I remembered when we first met in January, I was thinking, this is the first time ever that as a pastor, I've been authentic and open. because I don't know about you, when you go to your district meetings, it's almost like you're putting this facade on and going, how's church? You go, great, thanks. Good. I mean, the Holy Spirit's moving, and deep down you're going, everything's going wrong right now, but I can't say anything because I don't want to get fired.
Yeah. I don't know that it's exactly like that, but I usually try to blend into the wall, and just,
Okay.
but when people ask, hey, how's it going or how you doing? Usually it's one of those, oh yeah, it's going pretty good or going about
Yeah,
the same. And inside you're thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to make it another week.
absolutely. It's funny how people, when they look at pastors, they expect us to be these super strong leaders that don't struggle with any eternal wrestling, internal things in our own lives. And so we kind of buy into that concept of, okay, I've got to act this particular way because I have to show people that this is how God works. And if I'm struggling, how kind of a leader can I be if I'm second guessing what I'm teaching? It's almost
Yeah.
fun. So we met. This is interesting because Zach drove me nuts the first day.
I have a talent.
The first day, because I don't know what happened. I kind of opened up and I just said, my default system is to blend in and kind of disappear because of the tremors. And so, and it just seems like every church function, they serve a meal that you have to get a paper plate, which they get the cheapest paper plates on the planet. And then they say, get in the line like a buffet, and you're supposed to put all this food on this paper plate. So what I do, and what I've always done, is I just disappear. I don't get in line. I don't do anything until everyone's gone through it. And then I come quietly and get my own food. So I walk outside, and guess what? I hear, Kevin, from you. And tell me, this is what drove me nuts. It's the most loving thing on the planet, but yeah, it drove me nuts. What did you say?
So, I just noticed that you were disappearing, and you had mentioned that.
Yeah.
And so I decided that I was going to ask you to just get in line with me. I didn't want you to feel left out or off to the side. And so I followed you outside and I said, hey, you're going to come in line with me. And you argued, I think. I
Yes,
don't
I
think
did.
you.
I said, no, I'm fine. No, I'm fine.
Yep. I think actually I put my arm around you to make you turn
You
around.
did. You did. I'm going, man, I have personal spaces. I hardly know this guy. And I'm struggling in my head thinking, this is the most loving thing in the world to do this because I've had no other pastor that saw this but you. And I think we only met for an hour, maybe an
At the
hour and
most,
a half
yeah.
prior.
Yeah.
So I kind of built a kinship with you. I said, this guy has a heart. This guy has a big heart. And so when we went to the recalibration, I kind of want to focus on this part, is when we were in a meeting here in the office, I kind of opened up on a text message I received a few weeks prior to that. And it was a brutal text message. And it was super long and it was super graphic. And basically, when I read the text message, he was in a breakup with someone, and I did not choose sides. And in that text, it basically said, you are an illiterate, handicapped, stupid pastor. You should be dead. I hope your wife finds you dead. And it was just on and on and on and on. It was like 5 long text messages that I'm going to come to your church and and so Jennifer and I got to a point where we had to report this to the police. So I read that and I was going, okay. And people prayed over me and stuff like that. So at the end of the time that we got together, we were going to the Santa Monica Pier and you rode with me in my car.
The Tesla.
Was it the Tesla?
Yeah. Yep.
See, nobody knows I have a Tesla. Thank you. That Tesla was rented for a day. I didn't have it. So we rode in the Tesla. And you asked me an interesting question that just this whole conversation came out of it. What did you ask me?
Yeah, so I remember your text message. It said it had a lot of horrible stuff in it, a lot of expletives and
Mhm.
things that you would never want to say on air. But I think it also then included a whole lot of really just inappropriate, insulting language around, short bus and things like that.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah. It
think it
was
had some,
about my, yeah, he was saying you ride the short bus to church,
yeah.
inferring that I was retarded.
Yeah, it was really horrible. And so I don't know. I think some of it was just maybe me wanting to dig deeper on how that felt to you internally.
Right,
And so I think I just said, um, I mean, be honest about this. You've probably said that to yourself and worse before, haven't you? Because I was just thinking that maybe the reason the text message hit so hard or hurt so much was because it was echoing things that you struggle with internally anyways.
right.
Um, and
And,
but
and
that was apparently not the case.
no, no, no. It's what people have labeled me to, and I go, and I yeah, and I go, wow, Zach's going deep. We weren't even on the 405 freeway. I mean, right when we got in the car, you start talking about this, and I said, no, I don't think so. And then you said, I tell myself this. How did you say it?
I think I said something like, well, I say that kind of stuff to myself and worse all the time. I mean, daily.
Yeah. So this is where it got into this deep conversation, not only as men, but also as pastors as well,
Hmm.
because there is an eternal voice that is always talking to us. And this is how Grace Track for me started, was that eternal voice should be, you are God's beloved son, whom I'm well pleased. That's the eternal voice that needs to be spoken, but you and I have had eternal voices that don't say that.
Yeah.
And your internal voice was really deep in a sense. So I kind of want to talk about this with you as a pastor and a husband and as a man. I was going, wow, where is this coming from? How, we're almost going to a point where there's something that's just really broken inside of Zach. Because you just kind of said it as a matter of fact.
Yeah. And I think when I said it, my intent was to help you and to,
As a
um,
pastor,
yeah, and just as a friend, I wanted to get it. Is there something in here that's really hurting him?
right,
And perhaps I was thinking about the whole, you know, like the lunch line thing or that kind of stuff, and just making sure that you knew that that's not how any of us saw you, and that I was thinking that if I could redirect your internal voice,
right.
that I was going to do my best to do that. And honestly, I had no intent of me being the one who would open up in that conversation. Um,
Well, we kind of both opened up because
yeah,
I back then I really had it. My eternal voice is wasn't I'm on a small bus, but my eternal voice has always been why God has asked me, have called me. Because there's
mm,
a lot more people that are a lot more talented with greater ability and leadership. And so for me, in a sense, you're right, because I disappeared. I disappear with a bunch of pastors that get together because it intimidates me. Because I just think it's nobody's being real. No one's being authentic. Nobody's being honest. And Brene Brown talks about this. Now I'm getting sick. Um, she talks about leading with authenticity rather than armor.
mm.
And I like that what true leadership does. So tell me, where were you coming from when you were asking that question? How did we get this conversation going deeper?
Yeah, so we're sitting there in the car and driving along, and I think I had this battle going on in my head because after I had asked that, and then you had kind of countered to me, that, no, you don't say those horrible things to yourself. And then it kind of, you had this realization, wait, do you? And I just assumed that everybody did. I thought that was just normal. And I guess it had never occurred to me that some of the harshness, of the voice in my head, not like a crazy voice, but your own voice. It had never occurred to me that that was out of the norm. Um, and I had come to that recalibrate meeting in October. I wasn't in a good place personally. I was, struggling through some difficulties at the church. We were coming through a rough season. And I take some medications, and one of them got messed up, and so I had a couple of rough months related to that as well. Just, but I came to that October recalibrate really feeling defeated, and I think I even shared on our last day that I felt cursed. I felt like I was, there was no point in trying to do any good because it was just not going to happen. And so I had been praying though, because even when I'm at my worst, I don't give up on the Lord. I just tell him he ought to give up on me. Um,
That's a deep statement.
yeah, yeah. And so I was praying, Lord, I'm going to do my best to hear your voice in this.
Mhm.
And I promise you that if you give me the moments to be healed or to grow, that I'm going to try to have the courage to take them. And so maybe that was part of it, is that I thought God had sent me this time to help you. And I was, because in that moment, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that I had all the answers and I'm going to fix Pastor Kevin. That's not what I mean. But
You and the whole team need to fix it.
but I felt like, okay, so maybe what he's going through right now is what I can help with. Because I hear the need for being noticed in some of that, I guess.
And it's interesting too, because what you've gone through as a child and gone through as a pastor, a lot of people would assume because you're a pastor, you worked through this, you dealt with it. This is past, this is done with and dealt with. And so I think as a pastor, when it resurfaces in our lives, then you're right. We say, why are you investing in me, God? I can't move beyond this. And I think it's because your sensitivity of what you've gone through, you can see other people disappearing in the parking lot because they feel inferior because of their disabilities. You're the one who can see it real quick.
Mm,
And I think that's an incredible ability that God has given people that have been broken. They can see other broken people,
yeah,
and their egos are not controlling them. Once the ego controls us, then we just pretend we have no problems. We just, okay, this is done. I dealt with it. Praise God, hallelujah. I'm healed completely. And to me, in my life, my healing is every day. It's every day. I will not be completely healed from particular issues in my life until I see Christ face to face. I believe. Now he could do something better, you know. I don't know if you agree on that.
yeah. I think, I mean, we spent hours talking that night. We went to the pier and talked all the way up and down the pier, and it was really healing for me in a lot of ways. So again, I had no intention of opening up as much as I did,
Right.
but I just found that it seemed like the right time and the right opportunity. So I decided to share about my past and some abuse at the hands of someone in the church, not a family member, but someone in the church, and how that just felt like, when that happens to you as a child, it's not as if you have control over that situation, um, but you convince yourself that you did.
Right.
And
How old were you?
uh, that's a hard question. I'm thinking 10, 11, maybe 9, somewhere in there.
So how does it, the thing is, it's almost to the point, I think we were talking about this. How does an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old person process this? It just, it's got, and to me, I remember when we were talking about this, I was going, you know, when I was a teenager, emotionally, I wasn't even grown. I was just a dork.
Yeah.
But let alone 8 or 9 or 10 years old, you are in your transformative years, learning about life, learning about trust, learning about how the world works. So, did you take responsibility because of this? Did you feel it was your fault?
Yeah, and that's been one of the hard things to fight against is feeling like I made choices to lead to this, or that I mean, it was presented as a game, and so I jumped right in, and even then after the fact, there were times that I think I was the one who even asked about the game because it just seemed like it was um, what bigger kids or cooler kids did. It was, I mean, this was well, if the group of people that I like, that this person represented is doing that, then, maybe that's what you just do, and so, and it's kind of hard to remember all the details there, but I know that for me, it was the battle then that I have faced since is feeling like it was my choice.
Okay.
And then, but then also recognizing that, um, there were a lot of directions that this led later on in life, like struggles with pornography, struggles with lust, and then just all the self-esteem issues that come along with that, and so then that's, I think, where I started to feel cursed, is that something that I didn't necessarily choose,
Mhm.
though because I can rationally I can see that, okay, I didn't actually choose this,
Right.
but there are a lot of other things that have been a part of my life or struggles that then, how much of that did I really know the long-term lasting effect of when I got into that? And so there was, I guess, this feeling of this is never going to leave me. That voice is never going to stop. And so you just feel um, significantly broken without the ability to heal.
Right.
Um, and maybe that's why I felt comfortable opening up to you, because uh, you know I have uh, um, I don't know, I guess I think I used the story of in scripture where Jesus heals the man with the withered hand.
Mhm.
I think when we talked I mentioned it,
Yeah, you did.
and when I see you and you have the tremors, and you wish people wouldn't notice it, and so you tried to disappear when it's a situation that it's more noticeable, like the lunch line, and when you get nervous it's probably worse, and so you were trying to disappear and I wanted to pull you in. And
Right.
some of that is because I have the same things that I don't want people to know. It's just mine aren't out there for everyone to see.
Right. They're not
um
obvious.
yeah.
Like the only reason I can hide it if my hands are in my pocket, and I always wear this sweater thing that I can put my hands in my pocket, and it's
Yeah.
a natural thing. It's not like I consciously think every single day, oh, I gotta hide my hands. It's just something I naturally do. But let me ask you this: did you get to a point where I need to ask for help? I need to figure this out. I need to bring somebody. And if you did, have you ever been judged? Like you asking for help and all you got was slam dunked.
Yeah, so there have been a few times where I've asked for help, where I felt like I needed to open up and share about this because it was eating away at me.
Right,
And I've had friends who immediately were open and just listened and offered encouragement. And I've seen counselors who are definitely encouraging. I've seen some counselors who are maybe less helpful. But then I've also had friends who um, just didn't want to talk about it, or got almost mad at me, I guess, for saying anything. And so that kind of scared me away from talking about it a lot also. So
right.
there have been
And
hard times.
were those people in the church?
Yeah.
See, that's what gets me, you know, because we have a theme in our church: no judgment, only love. And sometimes when you're trying to open up from a childhood craziness that was not your fault to say, look, I'm struggling with this particular area of my life. Now, and now I'm struggling with pornography, or I'm struggling in this area. I need to be healed. I need to be redeemed. I need to be this. And then when we open up to people in the church, it's like, how dare you talk about it? Just keep it quiet. And so I think in our conversation, you were just saying, okay, forget it. I'm not going to talk to anybody because I opened up and then I got pulled back, in ministry, right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, and I think it is a lot for people to take in. I mean, I get that. It's, throwing that at somebody is a, it's deep, it's hard, it's not easy to hear, to talk about, because it's kind of a sensitive subject, or to some people it's just, hey, we don't talk about those things. And so I think maybe that was part of it, that, and I want to give people the benefit of the doubt that maybe they didn't mean it as a rejection so much as it just made them uncomfortable. Um, but
Okay.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard to bring up, and I think it's hard for people to hear sometimes.
And I think it's good for people to hear it. I think it's good to be raw. I think it's good to be saying, this is where I'm struggling with. Because if somebody's listening to, watching this video podcast, and they're going, I'm Zach. I'm going through this, and I think, let me ask you this question: what's worse, talking about it or being silent about it?
Being silent about it, since this podcast centers around grace, it's what I have found is more often than not, grace is what is given when you open up. And if you don't ever give the chance to receive grace, then you're not going to. If I never talk about it and I keep it in, then all I'm hearing is that voice of condemnation or guilt or
Right,
shame. I'm never giving anyone the chance to offer grace. And at least in my experience, God, who is the giver of grace, who always is offering grace,
right,
he often offers it through people.
right. No, that's you must be a preacher, Zach. You must be a preacher. So tell us about your family. Okay.
So I have a wife and 4 boys.
Okay.
Um, our oldest is 15 and our youngest is 6. And our house is always crazy and covered in Legos. And my wife does an amazing job of keeping up with all of their stuff. We homeschool, so
Oh, do you
um,
really? Oh, good night.
so she's far busier than I am. That's why I'm in my office today.
Yeah, we have a Pastor Ruben that's come to his office too. You just need to break. You're not allowed to be in your office. I need to go to the office and be a break. Need a break. So going through what you've gone through, does it affect your parenting? Because you had 4 boys that have gone through about the same age. They've all gone through the 8, 9, 10-year olds. Have you? Now I don't have any children, so I would know if something happened to me like you. I would just say, you are going to stay in the house. You're not going to go to church. You're not going to do this at least for 3 years.
We've been sensitive to it, and my wife doesn't have the same story, but she has some parts of her past, I guess, help her to understand what I've been through. And so when I'm uncomfortable with uh, teenagers or young people watching our kids, she gets it. For a long time it was family only could watch the kids kind of thing. And there are questions that I'll ask them after they've been somewhere, just not blatant, but hey, how was it? What was the fun thing you guys did? Was there anything that wasn't fun, or was there anything that that bothered you? That kind of thing. And I just try to give them an opportunity to share if something's going on, because and I don't know that I would have answered that question truthfully as a kid,
Yeah.
but I'm hoping to give them the opportunity that, and even then, if they don't tell me the truth, and I'm not saying that they wouldn't, but if I say that, I even watch how they respond to
Right.
try to see, okay, is there something there, and they just don't want to tell me.
That's a good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point. When did you tell your parents when you were a kid?
So I didn't when so we moved when I was I think around 12 or 13. My dad is also a pastor, and so we moved. And I think somewhere in that move, I just kind of repressed all of that. I don't know, because I don't remember actively thinking about it at all
Mhm.
in high school. I mean, I know um, it was affecting and influencing my behavior,
Right.
for sure, but I wasn't actively thinking about it until the summer before I went to college, and then I started having.
So you held it all the way through junior high, high school, and now you're away from your parents in college.
Yeah, so I started having these nightmares, that were just really odd. These nightmares of being in a situation and not being able to control it, and they were, sexual nightmares, or just, it was weird, and
Right.
they felt real. And I know, like, when I would wake up, I would be in a cold sweat. I was, my heart was elevated, and at the time, I was a pretty in shape 18, 19-year-old kid, and so that's
And
not
you are
normal.
now.
Yeah, yeah, I wish. Still the strapping young man that I once was, but um,
It was good to live in denial.
and so I just remember, at some point it hit me that these weren't nightmares; these were memories. Um,
Okay.
and I don't know when that happened, but somewhere in there, I came to the realization that, wow, this is truth. This is my story, and I didn't at first catch that, and so then it was just eating away at me, as I went to college and started taking on way more than I could handle in terms of class load. And you're going to school, you're away from home, you're doing all that stuff. You're trying to learn what it is to be kind of an adult. When you're at college, it's a little different, but still, growing up and then dealing with that. And I know I had not talked about it with anyone. Um, and I didn't really want to, because that's not something that you just want to lead with. Hey, by the way,
Yeah. I'm coming out. I got all these nightmares.
yeah,
So when I was 8 years old. Let me tell you
yeah.
about it.
So my first year of college, I did pretty well with it. I mean, I kind of kept it down. It wasn't a huge deal. I mean, I know it affected me, and I was still struggling majorly with the pornography addiction that was related to it. And I just had a lot of internal struggle going on, and that internal voice was loud and critical. And at some point in there, I got in trouble for the computer stuff, and so I had to go talk to,
Yeah. Pornography.
um, yeah, for the
Pornography.
pornography on the computer, and I had to go talk to our resident director of the dorm I was in. And then because of how significant it was, I think I even had to go see a counselor on campus.
Okay.
Um, and so as I'm talking with the counselor, and she was asking some questions, it it went deeper, I guess. And so she was able to kind of pull out of me that this was further than just a simple addiction. Um, and so I started seeing a counselor at a professional office in town. And the second year when I came back to college is when it really ramped up. Um, and I started hitting some pretty significant depression. My grades took a major dive. And that was the semester I had decided to add on. So a normal semester was something like 12 to 16 credits, and I was doing 20. and, uh, and they were hard classes,
Right.
and I think I was hoping that I could just ignore and push away any of the thoughts, the memories, the feelings, and work my way through it. But that did not go well. Um, and I got to the point where I was constantly having heartburn over this because I knew I needed to talk about it. It was eating away at me internally, and I just wasn't giving in. So I was eating Tums like they were Skittles, all day long. Like 2 an hour is what it says on the thing, and I was going through those like crazy, and I couldn't deal with, like, it didn't help the heartburn at all.
Do you think, in a sense, the Lord was trying to surface all of this?
Oh, I'm sure he was, and I was running in a lot of ways. I mean, I
Yeah.
I knew that I had a call to ministry at that point, and to be involved in the church in some way or another, and I was running from that. I didn't want to hear that voice, and I knew he was wanting to help me deal with the other addiction issues in my life and all of the hurt. I knew, that the Lord was pulling at that, and I was afraid, and I didn't. I think some of it was because I knew that one of the steps I needed to take was to share that with um, friends, but more importantly, probably to share that with my parents.
So,
Um,
so when you shared it with your parents, how was the reaction? With
um, they felt, guilty that they had not protected me as well as they should have, and they felt a real responsibility. And but there was, immediate grace, and this isn't your fault, and I'm so sorry this happened to you. I mean, there was no anger towards me whatsoever. It was a lot of understanding.
oh, that's
Um,
good.
yeah, it was great. And I think, looking back, I can see that I was a little bit afraid that I was just going to get in trouble.
Right.
There was this
Even in
part of my
small,
mind that was a kid, and not, I was probably 19 or 20 when I shared this with my parents, and there was a part of me that was afraid I was going to get in big trouble for this, which is silly to think about now, but
yeah, no, I totally, I get it, So after this, most men at one time, in fact, all men, all the time, I should say at one time, have struggled with pornography. Looked up pornography. I don't know what the statistics are, women. How did you work through that? How did you break that habit or that addiction?
yeah, I mean, that's a long battle of changing the way you think about sex, changing the way you think about women, changing the way you see yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there's a heart issue that the Lord really needed to deal with and root out.
Right.
Um, and for me, at least, it was also somewhat just an escape from reality. It
Yeah.
became this,
It's like an
um,
addiction.
yeah, and it became this contrasting thing where when I was struggling with the memories or the thoughts, I could run to this other thing that wasn't real,
Hmm.
because the thing I was struggling with was real.
Right.
And so it was a, I don't know, I don't want to make it sound like it was okay to do. It wasn't. There are healthy ways to deal with it, and I wasn't. It was just me running
Right.
away even further. And uh, so in college, around the time that I opened up to my parents and I was dealing with this, I was taking some medicine for depression. I was sleeping all the time and skipping classes. It got to a point where the voice in my head was always one of hate and anger toward myself. And so I ended up leaving school mid-semester because I attempted suicide, just to try to get rid of.
Wow, it was so deep and so hard that that was the only option at that moment.
Yeah, and for me at least, I again, looking back, because this is enough years ago, I think that I was unwilling to offer grace to myself in any capacity. Um, I was unwilling to forgive my assumed guilt. And I think I was even just angry at myself for how this had defined and affected every other area of my life.
Mhm.
Um, that I had let this thing win. And again, I know that's faulty thinking. It's
Right, right. But sometimes it's just we automatically think that way. It's a default way of thinking.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to learn how to think this way. It's more of a reaction way of thinking this way. Okay, so let's move forward a little. Now you're a pastor. You have four wonderful boys. You got a beautiful wife that you don't deserve. Like me, I don't deserve my wife.
No argument. For either of us, to be quite honest, I agree.
So every Sunday you get up on the platform like myself. After the prayer or worship, whenever you guys up there, do you still have the voices, the negative voices, like I shouldn't be doing this, or is that a battle that you will have currently
Uh,
or the rest of your life?
I definitely still have the voices, and there are seasons when they're louder and seasons when I feel like I listen to them less.
Hmm.
Um, and I pray about it and I ask the Lord to remove some of those things from me. And I would say that He does, and He is working in me. Um, and I'm trying my best to hear His voice more. Um, but I don't want to say that it's something I'll have the rest of my life, because that's, sometimes I worry that I'm not giving God the chance to take care of it.
Right.
But at the same time, I recognize that I'm not so sure that this is something that's just going to go away.
Right.
I think it's something that I have to learn to hear His voice and try to not listen to the others,
Okay.
and trust Him. I mean, I think some of it is just that I have to learn to trust Him, even when my voice is arguing. Um, so for instance, when I get done on a Sunday, I'm almost immediately thinking that, wow, I blew that one. That was terrible, and
Every
nobody.
Monday, we always think our sermons suck. I
Yeah.
get it. Yeah. So, okay, closing question. If somebody is watching this podcast and they go, I'm Zach, because we know statistics, men and women have been hundreds and thousands, if not millions, have been in your position, that they're struggling with this silently and they haven't shared anyone and they're feeling that it was their fault as well. I know there's nothing you could say, but how do you direct one's way of doing a paradigm shift in their thinking that would help them take the steps of opening up about the situation to be healed?
Yeah. What I would say is, pray and ask God to help you know who you should share with,
Mm-hmm.
um, because that has helped me. And even if you stumble upon this and you're not a believer, um, I would say take this chance and ask God to help in this one area, and give Him the chance to show you that He is real, that He is listening. And then what I would say is, um, for me, and I think that this would be true for others, when you open up and share about it, you give yourself the chance to receive grace that can heal, that can let you feel freedom from this. Um, and in my life, when I have shared about this, inevitably, it opens a door for me to hear someone else who's been through something similar, who has been hurt, and then I find greater healing and grace for myself
Mm-hmm.
in hearing someone else's story and being a good listener, or someone who's just able to say, I'm sorry, this wasn't your fault. Don't hold yourself to this for the rest of your life, because what I tell myself regularly, like you said earlier, um, that's not who God sees me as. He sees me as His beloved son, and He delights in me, is what the Psalm says. He believes in me, He delights in me, He loves me, and He doesn't look at me as an addict. He doesn't look at me as this sinful, disgusting person. He doesn't look at me as someone who was broken or cursed.
Mm-hmm.
He looks at me and sees someone that He sent His son to die for. He looks at me and sees someone who is worth every investment of love that He has to give, and pours out grace. And you know, it's easy to say that,
Right.
and the shift comes, I think, in opening yourself up to hear others say it, so that maybe, and it takes time, but you can hear their voices and the Lord's voice in your head, speaking louder truth than the one in my head that's speaking harsh untruth.
No, excellent point and an excellent way to end it. So, give us the name of your church. I'm going to encourage people to look at your service as well. If somebody wants to look at your service next week, this is Tuesday, so next coming Sunday, how do they watch you live? after they watch my incredible service.
Yeah, so it's Mountain View Christian Fellowship. We have a YouTube channel. If you search Mountain View Christian Fellowship, it should come up. And then our website is MVCF, as in Mountain View Christian Fellowship. So mvcfyakima.com. And then we actually live stream our services on Facebook.
Oh,
And
dear.
later on, we post them to YouTube and put that link on our website. And then even do the audio podcast through the podcasts and all that. You can find it there. So if you search us on Facebook, you'll probably find it. And that's where we live stream 10:30, I think, on Sundays, at least during this virus season. And then we may go back to only live streaming the sermons, but we'll see.
Okay, and if somebody wants to email you directly that would say, hey, thank you for, encouraging you or asking questions, how do they get hold of you?
Yeah, so if they go onto our Facebook page, you could private message the church there, and I would get that. That goes to me.
So you're the only one that gets it?
Yeah, and then if you would rather just email me directly, it's Zach with a K, so ZACK, David, DAVID at yahoo.com, all lowercase, just ZachDavid@yahoo.com. If I start getting a bunch of spam, Kevin, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. So no, I won't. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate you being part of our Grace Track. And I'm missing church already. I don't know about you, but I just want to go back to having services. Hey, I was thinking about this. I think our service should be the first service we actually worship together should be a celebration of the resurrection of Easter.
I think so too.
We're going to skip Easter.
Yep.
And so I think it would be. I think it would be interesting to put a sermon together about the resurrection and the virus. And there's some kind of good sermon there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Life after death, and yeah.
Yeah, and just living. Yeah, can't breathe, the breath of life and stuff like that. So it would be incredible. All right, thank you guys, and thank you for listening to the podcast. And hopefully we will be on tomorrow as well. God bless, and have a great day.